Hi students, it's Anna Otto, your instructor. I held the second Zoom office time yesterday on Tuesday, the 26th of January, but I only had a few students join me, so I thought I would go ahead and summarize what we talked about during the Zoom time. Okay, so I'm going to start here. I am logged in my student view mode, so this should be roughly what you see when you log into our Canvas site. Starting here with modules, there's one thing I wanted to discuss from module 1. So after you took the quiz, you will have unlocked the content, learning content for the module. This first page here, getting started with lifespan development, came across this accordion with a number of different tabs. We're going to look here in the tab for basic issues. And so you can see this relates to the context or content in your book and pages 3 to 5. And I'm asking students to start by participating in a poll and just seeing how the class registers in terms of their thoughts about nature and nurture, which is one of the 3 basic issues of human development that's discussed in the module, discussed in the text. I was a little bit disappointed. Only about half of the students actually participated in the poll. So of the 75 students we have active in class, there were 37 that participated in the poll. But I do want to share and talk about the results that I saw from student participation in the poll. Okay, so when you participated in the poll, when you clicked on that link, it took you to a Google document. The Google document posed the question, what do you think is most important in determining human traits? And I set this up to be similar to what I would do in class. So this is a question, open-ended question that I would regularly ask students in class. And I'd say, if you think it's nature, raise your hand. If you think it's nurture, raise your hand, right? And most students would raise one of their hands. Few students might not raise any hand because they're not sure. So this also has an I don't know. This also has had a space for other. And some students might ask, well, wait a minute, I read the text. I thought it was nature and nurture. So maybe they raise their hand for nature and they raise their hand for nurture. And actually that's the correct answer. It's nature and nurture. About a fourth of the students who participated in the poll indicated that. They indicated it either by clicking both the nature and the nurture or by clicking other, and that's what you see down here, both, where students were able to put in their response to other, and the response that they put in was that it's both. So again, about a quarter of the students who responded to the poll realized that it was nature and nurture. This one response here was interesting. So this was a student who also selected other, and they said that they felt that it was more nature when it was a physical or biological feature, and more nurture when it was a social feature. And to some degree that is accurate, but in pretty much all cases, everything is a complex interplay of nature and nurture. And there are actually whole fields of study that we learn about at the end of chapter 2 that try to tease apart how much nature, how much nurture. So how much of a given trait comes from our genes, how much of a given trait comes from our experiences or our environments. Okay? So I'm going to keep the results of this poll in mind, and we're going to go ahead and pop back to our Canvas site. Okay, here we are back at the Canvas site, back at this tab about basic issues in lifespan development. So again, I had asked students to start with the poll just so we could get a pulse on the class and what students were feeling about the relative influence of nature and nurture. And then I have a video in here for you. And this is a video that I recorded where I talk about the basic issues in more detail, including this idea of nature and nurture, and providing explanation as to why it really is nature and nurture. and that even with traits that maybe on the surface seem like they would be exclusively, let's say, nature, exclusively genes, biology, something like maybe your height or your skin color, that those have a strong, or at least some of a environment or nurture component also. So you'll never be bigger than your genes say you can be, but you might not reach your full potential, for example, if you have a lot of illness or you don't have good nutrition. So it's a combination of the two. So our biology might set the parameters, and then our experience is going to determine where we fall within those parameters. Skin color, same thing. Our, basic range of skin tone is going to be set by our genes, but then how much sun we're exposed to is going to determine how dark within that range our skin is. And certainly, the same is also true for social characteristics like personality. Even very little babies have different personalities and different temperamental characteristics that you can see very early on. I shared with students who came to the Zoom time about an assignment I did as an undergrad where we had to go observe brand new babies. And I was amazed at how much you could already see their personality showing through. So that is what I wanted to share from Module 1. So I'm going to go ahead and go back. By the time you're watching this, you should either just be finishing up or just have finished up Module 1 with the final assignments, the peer responses, and the chapter review being due no later than 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, January 27th. The second module, which relates to Chapter 2, actually opened up, and it's time to start working on the content in Module 2. And so I wanted to take a couple of minutes and look at that. So you can see I'm back out to my student view through modules. And notice that the beginning part of Module 2 is dark and the latter part of Module 2 is gray. That means that I haven't yet done the first thing I need to do. So it means that the module is open, but that I can't do any of this later stuff until I do the very first thing that I'm required to do, which is look at the overview. And I want students to start with the overview page for the modules because it gives a general description of what's covered in the module, specific learning objectives for the module, and then a detailed plan of what you'll be doing in the module. So for every module, you'll be reading your text, you'll be taking short quiz or quizzes related to the chapter or chapters. So modules 1, 2, and 3 relate to chapters 1, 2, and 3. But then once we move into the age periods, we'll start covering multiple chapters within a module. So after you take the quiz successfully, earning at least a 3 of 5, it'll unlock the more of the content in the module for you. And then by the end of the module, you'll be submitting your chapter review. Chapter review either being those instructor-created reviews that are guided chapter reviews, or completing the embedded quizzes in the publisher's Revel site, if that's what you're choosing to do. In Module 2, you will have an assignment that you'll be completing, but you won't have a discussion. Module 1 had a discussion, but not an assignment. After this module, so starting with Module 3, you'll have assignments and you'll have discussions. So we're kind of dipping our toes in and getting started. So I want to go back out here real quick to my module view, show you now that I've looked at that overview, I've viewed that page. It unlocks the next couple of pages in the module. So the review options, that's where you would download the instructor created review if that's what you're choosing to do, or just a reminder that the publisher's Revel quizzes are also an option. And then that will unlock the quiz for me. So then I need to go in, I need to take the quiz, earning at least a 3 of 5 to unlock the rest of this content. And I'm not going to do that right now, but what I am going to do is go out to my instructor view just so I can show you what is in those pages so that you'll have a sense. Okay, so as I said, this is my instructor view, so you can see everything's unlocked for me, everything's published and unlocked. So after the quiz, then you'll come in to part 1 and part 2 of the learning content for the module. And so this particular chapter is about genetic and environmental foundations of development. I actually flipped the order from the text in terms of the order that I presented in the module. So I start with environmental foundations, the text starts with genetic foundations. But I start with environmental foundations because we're going to use this information along with the information from module 1 for our first assignment. They both feed into that, but let me just show you the types of topics that are included in the page about environmental foundations. You can see there's what you'll always find, a brief description, the related pages in the text, and then a number of different links, resources that I have gathered up for you to help enrich the learning environment beyond just the content that's in the text. And so when we're talking about environmental foundations, we're talking about cultures, subcultures, we're talking about contexts, we're talking about socioeconomic status, income level, etc. So one really important thing to take away from this portion of the module, this portion of the text, is this idea of socioeconomic status, or SES. SES is a proxy, or as a proxy, we look at income levels, so upper, middle, lower class. But that really isn't a full definition of socioeconomic status. It includes income level, but also education and prestige of job. And so you get a little more information about that in here. But please do make sure that you're going through and connecting in with the links that I'm providing to you. So as I said then, when you work on your assignment, it's combining information from Module 1 and that first part of Module 2. And so I'm having you reflect on your own journey, your own development up to this point. Now, obviously, most of you are somewhere 18 to 30 years of age, so I'm not expecting a detailed year-by-year blow of your growth and development, but I am wanting you to talk about some of the highlights. And so specifically focusing on major developmental events that you've experienced and identifying the age periods and domains that were involved, as well as the types of experience. And so I'm wanting you to think of examples of all 3 types of experience from chapter 1, so age graded, history graded, and non-normative. And then for each of those, place them into the domain and the age period, hopefully getting a variety of domains and age periods that you're covering. And then from chapter 2, also thinking about how different contexts, family, socioeconomic status, culture might have influenced your development up to this point. So again, just kind of a combining of information up till this point and using it to reflect on your own experience. Always make sure and check the grading rubric. That'll tell you how I'm assigning points. So the assignment is worth 10 points total, 3 points for making sure that you cover the major life events, 3 points for making sure that you cover the age periods and domains, 3 points for talking about context, so family, SES, culture, and then 1 point just overall impressions. After you've done that, then you get into part 2 of module 2. And part 2 of module 2, again, is the information that is covered at the beginning of chapter 2 in the text, is looking at genetic foundations. So learning some basic genetics and different inheritance patterns, so dominant, recessive, codominance or incomplete dominance, and X-linked are the types of genetic patterns of inheritance that we'll talk about, looking at some of the abnormalities, particularly chromosomal abnormalities, and then considering reproductive choices and looking at ways that we can get information, very accurate information sometimes, about developing individuals even before they're born, so while still during the prenatal period. And then the last part, I mentioned earlier the idea of some fields of study, such as behavioral genetics, really looking to try and figure out how to parse out the influence of nature and nurture. And so that's what's covered there. After you've completed all of that learning content, then you get into the extra resources, study tools, if they're helpful for you. So for every module, I'll have Quizlet set, and I'll have a crossword puzzle with vocab terms. Okay? And then very end of the module, the wrap-up, kind of a restatement of the overview, what you should have done and learned in this particular module. And then very end of the module is the place to submit your chapter review results. So that is what I have. If you have questions, make sure and ask.